Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kristen Donnelly, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research, and I want to thank Authority Magazine for giving me the opportunity to tell you about the 5 top trends that I'm tracking in terms of the future of workplace wellness. Number 1, hybrid work. I know everyone is talking about this, but I want to be really clear. It's not going away. Also, all-in-one solutions should be. So having your entire team in the office all the time, no matter what they want, is not great. Having your entire team remote all the time, no matter what they want, might not be great either. There are lots of degrees within those things. We have proven that we can be hyper productive and really great. The only thing that fell apart, honestly, in the last couple of years was the supply chain. And that has nothing to do with hybrid or remote work and everything to do with international shipping arrangements and international manufacturing. And no one in manufacturing is asking to work from home really anyway, especially those on like the labor line. We get it. But if you're designing websites or you're a marketing executive or you're, in some sort of other form of tech, you can probably work from home if that is something you want to do. So we are watching for sure the future of hybrid work, how people are talking about it, how people are implementing it, what it can look like both in America and abroad. Number 2, burnout prevention. This is something that we teach on a lot. I actually get asked to talk about it a lot, especially as Americans, because we have a really specific cultural legacy of believing that hard work makes you a good person and that you can only rest after you die. We come by it honestly, it comes from the Puritans. I can tell you more about that later. But we have to talk about how to not slide in to believing that exhaustion is a badge of honor in the same way that we did prior to lockdowns. There's a national conversation now in a different tone about, the great reshuffle or the great resignation or why people are leaving and things like that. And we're being more honest about the fact that every single human on the planet is in some level of trauma from this global pandemic. And how it affects us and how it affects other people is something we all need to be keeping an eye on. Number 3 that we're watching is this need to investigate language. Now, there's lots of elasticity in history around how we use language. We used to call women's legs pins, for example, or gams. We don't do that anymore. Then there's some other ones that are maybe a little bit more workplace permanent. We didn't used to care about pronouns, and now we really should. We didn't really make sure that we weren't using racial slurs, and now we really need to. Part of workplace wellness is making sure that nobody is verbally attacked by a benevolent patriarchy that doesn't even stop to think about whether or not their words could be hurtful. So if you're making jokes or you still support the football team from Washington and you call them by their old name, or you have somebody in your office who is Asian and you mix up which, ethnicity they are within that panorama of cultures, all of that is bad. And it's things that we can look forward to. So I'm watching as more people get honest about the need to adapt, investigate, and create new language in order to make people feel more welcome and create a sense of belonging. For employee ownership, we're tracking this. Now, in some companies, this means actual shares of ownership. The other way is idea ownership, cultural ownership. What we're finding, especially with Gen Z who are coming up in the workplace, is that they desperately need to matter. Their ideas need to matter and be respected. They need to matter. They need to see how their work is going to matter. And so they need to have ownership of this identity that they're carrying around as an employee. So employee ownership, again, whether in shares or in emotions, is the 4th trend that we're tracking. And finally, the 5th trend is support for caregivers. We've got to stop pretending that the only people who may need flexibility when we call it family care is people with kids. There's lots of people with various forms of caregivers. Millennials are increasingly caring for their elderly parents. Some people who were kicked out of their families for being queer, or they are orphans from other circumstances, they have familial ties that aren't legal, and the companies don't often recognize them, but they're still emotionally strong and need to be respected. We have to talk about caregivers and not just family. Because right now, as it stands in a lot of companies, people who are single or married without children, who are caring for other things are still getting dumped on a lot because, oh, you don't have kids, you must have the time. We have to move past that. So once again, the 5 trends that I am tracking, that we at Abby Research are tracking, that we're figuring it out as we're going forward into 2022 and beyond, is what is hybrid work going to look like? How are we talking about burnout prevention? How are we treating language? What does employee ownership look like? And how are we talking about caregivers? I'm Dr. Kristen Donnelly. You can follow me at Abby Research, ABBEY Research, anywhere you're on the internet. Thanks again to Authority Magazine for having me. What a privilege.